Hello, all my NCGA friends. I hope things are going well with you during this very cold week. I've got a favor to ask. I don't advertise much or anything, but I really would. If you like my services, tell others about it, get them signed up. That's important to our sponsor. And you can do it very simply. Most of my posts have that on, or you can go to ncga.com/weather and sign up there because that's really something that's important to our sponsor. And the more we can have listening, the better it is that we continue this service. So that's the only favor I ask you. With that, let's talk about some opening thoughts. We're at a very interesting time of the year, and I tell you, I find it fascinating. I'm sure as a grower, you do too. I've got a lot I want to pass along. Sometimes I think I'm passing along too much to you, but there's still a high snow vulnerability out there, especially over North Dakota, parts of Minnesota, Wisconsin, and the Great Lakes. But overall, it's somewhat limited. We have had a very active snow season, but again, it's been pretty limited. There's been this really significant temperature variability, and that's not just at the Earth's surface that we've been seeing, but we've been seeing that well up into the atmosphere and over the northern hemisphere. Now, the role of snow cover extent is going to be playing much more a greater role. If we have large parts of the country covered with snow, the Midwest, it's going to tend to keep us colder and not warm up. If it doesn't have as much, it's going to allow us to moderate. Now, if you're in North Dakota, that's a pretty pessimistic way because you have a lot of snow, but most other areas don't. So keep that in mind. And also, I'm going to talk about a minute the coldest time of the year. So over the last 7 days, big story is the rain and snow moving up the southeast U.S., the southern snowstorm, and that'll be moving up the east coast. But look at the northern upper Midwest again. This is week after week, more snow over North Dakota, right across northern and central Minnesota, parts of Wisconsin and Michigan. That's been by far the active snow track so far this season, and that's something that I definitely want to put out another snow update this week. So we did have a number of inches of snow, generally in the 3 to 6 inches in this region up here this week. These are 3-day intervals. I wish I could get a weekly one, but this is sort of a combined. This is more recent, and this is showing some of the snow with a recent one. Then we have some lake effect snow as well. But if you look at the other parts of the state, other than maybe some lighter snow through the central Corn Belt here, this is some lighter snow. Not a whole lot, pretty quiet overall. So when we look at the snow on the ground, it's certainly a whole lot more than we saw last week at this time. But that area in white is very, very light. That'll go probably within a day once temperatures get above freezing. So sort of when you look at this, sort of subtract all that white, maybe that lightest blue. Sort of focus on the medium shade blue, and if we get a purple, that's really where it's the more significant snow extent. So right in here, that's the area that we're looking at, the real significant, and that's the type of snow that could moderate temperature type patterns. So temperatures last week were averaged colder than normal over large parts of the upper Midwest. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the coldest day of the year. I'm going to put this out probably early this week, and this is the briefing. I'm sort of looking at this period in the briefing. But if you look at these shades of green here, pretty large part of the nation over the next week or two, we're at the coldest day of the year. And this area in blue here, we're already past. So keep that in mind that once we get past this briefing period that I'm talking about, from a climatological standpoint, we start to see it warm up. Here's that average temperature for middle part of the nation, and you can start to see it starts to moderate. So that's sort of important because I'm going to be talking about some interesting trends, and keep in mind we're going to have sort of climatology working for or against us in a little bit. So some reason this season I've been talking about the EPO, the Eastern Pacific Oscillation. I think it's been a good predictor. Sort of gone either negative or positive. When it's gone negative, we've tended to get the cold air intrusions. The ridge builds up to the north. We get a trough over the U.S. And when it goes positive, what we get is we get a more of a straight flow going from west to east. And if you look at the predictions here as we get into the middle of the month, we get a strong prediction of a positive EPO. Now, what would that say? That would say that we would expect some moderating, especially over the eastern U.S. Now let's look at the models and see if they confirm that. This week, look how the jet stream straightens up. The blue shades, which is the dip, starts to push back. And I think the trend, and it's going to take a while, is that this air is going to gradually retreat. The coldest air is going to gradually retreat. Now we're going to have some cold anomalies in the southeast due to the snow on the ground. That'll take a while. That will melt. Was not going to stay on the ground. That's going to melt. And then this is going to push back. We do have one system this week, and that's going to produce some more snow, maybe some freezing rain over the upper Midwest. So that's going to be our weather hazard this week. If we look at precipitation, by far the big rain event we're going to be hearing about in the near term, actually this weekend, is going to be this extremely heavy precipitation over California. This is a 50 and 100 year recurrence interval. So we're going to see flooding and debris flows in that area. Elsewhere, other than some snow up in the colder, lingering cold, some enhanced precipitation in the Ohio Valley, that's about it. And here's your snowfall forecast. So even though it's not going to be all that heavy or that significant, it's still going to be adding up. 3 inches, maybe 4 to 5 inches, maybe 6 inches enhanced along the Great Lakes. So again, that same track. That's going to be the action this week as far as snow. Now, when we get into the 6 to 10 day period here, look at this shading of brown. So what does that mean? That's saying the jet stream is beginning to lift. It's beginning to bulge over the eastern U.S. That's going to say that temperatures are going to start to moderate over the eastern U.S. and push that cold air back. We're going to have a strong gradient. You can see that right here in the 6 to 10 day range. If you're up in the upper Midwest, you're going to be saying, man, look at all this snow, this cold air, but not too far down to the southeast. Nashville, for example, you're going to have well above normal temperatures, and all that snow is going to melt in this area very quickly in that 6 to 10 day range, if not sooner. But look at the gradient right here. Very cold, very mild. Then we get into the 17th through the 22nd. Now we're going through that transition. Remember, that coldest time of the year. So once we get out of here, we're getting to the part where temperatures start to warm up. Now I know it's still January, but it's good to see this type of pattern, that we don't have this big dipping jet stream during the coldest time of the year. We have a west to east jet stream, and look at our temperature anomalies as we get out into the January 17th through 22nd time frame. It looks like not too much unusually cold air. We have a very strong push of warm air in Canada. Cold air regions that don't go way up there are sort of losing their cold air, and the eastern half of the U.S. is mild. So we've gone through some cold, but it looks like it's going to sort of get milder. Here are your precipitation anomalies for week 1. Here are your precipitation anomalies for week 2. And then as we looking out 3 and 4, this is way out there. I always say that, let's sort of, look at this a little bit skeptically, but I think it's interesting to see the temperature probabilities being mild. So it definitely looks like we're changing our pattern out of this period of cold temperatures to some milder weather. We do have some hazards this week. We do have that ice potential within this area shaded right here. But you can see the cold air potential starts to shrink. And I think overall the trends are a moderating trend well into January, especially over the eastern half of the U.S. That persistent cold over the north central plains looks like it's going to also remain. And then that snow track, I don't see too much of a change of that, perhaps the upper Midwest into the Great Lakes. So that's the briefing for this week. I hope it's helping you. I appreciate you listening to it. If you have any questions, you know where to find me. And again, if you know some people, please pass it along. Take a look at the decision support dashboard. I use this every day. Lots of good information on here. I'm updating it all the time, something you can keep on your PC. And as you go through the day, especially during this cold time of year when you're in the office or at home, take a look. Look at it. agweatheradvisor.com, NCGA, and NCGA. And if you have any problems with it, send me an email. I can help you with that as well. Have a great week.